This story is something that was super traumatic for me, but it was never discussed again in my household. I was talking with my mom about it the other night and she still didn't say much. I thought I would share my thoughts with you all. When I was 13, I got a Dell desktop for school. The internet was fairly new for me back in 2003. AOL and MySpace. Yahoo Messenger. AOL chat rooms. AOL chat rooms were where I went. I was a shy, overweight kid back then. I am still shy to this day. But online, I could be anyone. I could say anything. It was amazing. I discovered so many things when I got the internet. If I could be anyone, so could someone else. Thus, how I met one 27-year-old man. One night I logged on, the AOL dial-up sound still makes me feel uneasy. I was sitting in my cold, dark kitchen. The computer was there so I could be monitored. It was just me and my mom, though, and she was always working, so no one ever really monitored me. Plus, she had no idea how to use a computer, so I got away with a lot. I was bored, so I hopped into an OL chat room, lurked for a bit, then posted my sex as female and my age as 15. I was really 13, but saying I was 15 made me feel so much more mature. Almost immediately, I received an incoming private message from an unknown account. It read, "Hey, my name is Rob. Where are you from?" And that's how it started. I told him where I was from, West Virginia, that I was in high school, which wasn't a lie. My school was from 7th to 12th grade. I asked him the same questions. He replied 19, male, New York. Oh man, was it cool to be talking to an older guy? And boy, was he cute. Honestly, I don't really remember much. Maybe I blanked it out. Maybe my memory is just shot. I do remember emails back and forth, the occasional phone call. I remember finding out he was talking to another girl and I wanted to break things off, but he begged and pleaded until I caved. Then came the "let's meet." I was nervous. He had never asked for a pic, had never really asked for much from me, just the emails back and forth, a phone call a day. But somehow he made me feel safe. He made me feel wanted. He made me feel cared for. He drove from New York to West Virginia one day. My mom worked right beside my house, so he parked about a quarter-mile away and took the back alley to enter my house. My friend was with me when he showed up, but was scared when she saw him and ran out the back door. I maybe should have taken a hint from that, but I just stood on the back porch with my head down. Was given a hug as he led me inside. Not even 5 minutes after being there, sitting on the couch, did he move things further. Then further, even into my bedroom. I won't get into the details on what happened next. I assume most can guess. After that, he left, with instructions to get in his car after I get off the school bus and we will go on a date. I had no idea where he was staying. I lived extremely far in the country, an hour's drive from the closest hotel. The next day I get ready for school, ride the bus for the 45-minute drive, and as soon as I hop off in the school parking lot, I get directly into his car. No one noticed. No one said anything. We drive around. Never go on a date. He just finds different places to park so that he can use me. I noticed a photo of another young girl, 15 or 16, in the visor of his car. Question him. Believe when he tells me it's his cousin. Believe when I question why his hairline is receding so much. Believe him when he tells me I can't see his driver's license because he left it in the hotel. Believed him when he said he loved me. I get dropped back off at school. Super sad that he was going back home, with promises he will call. Again, everything feels very fuzzy. I can't remember many emotions from this time. I do remember that a few days later, my mom says she found out I skipped school with a man, that I was never to see him again. And that was that. I do remember sending an email. I do remember a late-night phone call. I do remember saying, I wish I could just live with you. I remember him suggesting to come get me. I remember saying, okay. Days later, by the time he made the drive again, I was feeling iffy about leaving my mom. I loved her after all. I didn't think things through. I didn't put much thought into anything really. Packed a few clothes in a suitcase. I forgot all underwear. That is one of my sharpest memories. I felt bad that he drove 8 hours to get me. So I left in the middle of the night. Got in the car with him and his cousin. He got in the back seat with me. Proceeded to have sex with me while his cousin drove. Then get back in the front seat. This happened a few times between my home and his. The drive took forever. I had nothing to drink. Was offered nothing when they got something. They stopped to nap at a rest stop and I attempted to collect a call from my mom, but the phone there was disabled. I dug around for some change to get something to drink, but couldn't afford anything in the convenience store. So I drank out of a truck stop sink. Hours later, we park a block away from his house while he runs to get something. I am sitting in the back seat, waking up from a nap when around 8 or so men and women in black suits surround the car, screaming for us to get out with our hands up. My first thought was shit, first 10 minutes in New York, and I'm already being robbed. I am terrified. I get out, and a man pulls me over to the curb while the other officers force his cousin onto the ground. All the while they are asking my name and age and telling me to tell his cousin my age. I am put in the back of an unmarked car, driven to the New York Police Department, past reporters, cameras, news trucks, snuck into the back of the station. It was nothing like what you see on Law & Order Special Victims Unit. Inside, I see Rob in handcuffs for the last time. And for confused, in love, 14-year-old me, this is devastating. I am taken into a room and questioned for hours. I am then taken to the hospital, then a hotel where a nice woman brings me Taco Bell and stays with me as I fall asleep. The next day, 2 FBI officers escorted me home on a plane. There, I get off, and there I am greeted by police officers, my mother, and a horde of news reporters. I later found out that when my mom reported me missing, the police didn't want to do much. They didn't even take a picture of me. She had his license plate number. She remembers seeing his car parked by the road that first meeting. She took note since it was an out-of-state car, thanks to her being vigilant. I do find this is the only reason I'm alive today. The police said they would look into it, but that wasn't enough for my mom. She contacted a family friend who in turn contacted the governor of West Virginia, who in turn made the police look further into it. After they ran the license number, looked into the man, found out who he was. That was when they issued an Amber Alert, noting that I was in extreme danger. My cousin told my mom that he looked at Rob's rap sheet and it was a mile long, but I wouldn't tell my mother what was on it, for fear of scaring her more. I never went to court. I never went to any hearings, but I did fall into a horrible depression. My friends' parents wouldn't let them hang out with me. People spray-painted slut on my locker at school. I had no friends, but most of all, I thought a man was in prison for loving me. When I learned he got sentenced to 10 years in prison, which he served every year of, I became deeply troubled. I was in and out of the mental hospital for self-harm for years. I was on a slew of depression medication. Psychiatrists never talked to me about anything. I had to process it all myself. My late teenage years were better, though. I transferred schools, made best friends, graduated. But still in the back of my mind, I felt that I was the reason a man lost 10 years of his life, until I was told he was let out of prison. A couple of years after he was out, I contacted him on Facebook. At the time, I was around 24 or 25. He told me that if I ever contacted him again, he would kill both me and my mother, and that he still knows where I live. I had no idea what he planned to do with me. My mom still says that he planned on selling me to a sex trafficker. I was told that he had other girls my age he was talking to. Some good things happened because of my kidnapping. Schools all over my state started internet safety education classes. Kids were taught safety. Parents were taught how to keep kids safe. No other girls were taken by this man. So, to the man who ruined so many years of my life, I am 29 now. I am happy, healthy, and I have zero remorse that you are now listed as a level 3 sex offender and that you were in prison for so many years. The woman who experienced these horrible events posted this update. Thank you, everyone who has commented. Thank you, everyone who has in turn shared your story with me. I feel less alone. And thank you to the kind strangers who gave me gold and silver. I was very lucky. I was lucky I had a mom who never gave up. I was lucky she raised me. As a single mother, I know it was hard on her. She had to deal with my depression, my anxiety, acting out. She would visit me every single day that I was in the mental hospital as a teen, which totaled about a month at 3 different times. She would work 2 jobs to make sure I had what I needed. Take me after working a 12-hour shift to alternative school because I was kicked out of regular school for self-harm. I have read every comment and tried to reply to most. To all the women and men who have commented that they experienced something similar. Experienced being naive, been taken advantage of, thought that the internet was safe back then. My heart goes out to each and every one of you. But I am also proud of you. Proud that you overcame it. That you are still here today. A lot of people don't understand how intoxicating it can be to have someone older and experienced interested in you. How that feeling of falling prey to someone lingers with you always. If you have kids, check what they are doing online. You may trust them, but don't trust the creeps that linger. They are out there. While your kid might be smart and, they would never do anything crazy, it never, ever hurts to check. My best friend is an influencer, not big time, but with a big enough following to get free shit and has gotten 2 sponsored trips. She still works a full-time job, but does the Instagram thing on the side mostly because of the perks. She's not big enough to live off this yet. Anyway, this was her first trip. A little boutique hotel from Miami contacted her via Instagram and offered her an all-expenses-paid trip to Miami for Memorial Weekend 2018 in exchange for her to be in the hotel and take pics and do a couple of stories. She was told she could bring a female friend with her if she wanted to, and everything would be covered for. This was her first time doing this, so at the time she wasn't really sure of how it worked. They sent her a bogus contract for her to sign, and it said she'd be responsible for paying for her plane ticket to Miami, and that she'd be reimbursed for it later. This was to prevent a no-show, meaning the influencer gets the ticket purchased by the hotel and influencer never shows up. It seemed reasonable. She invited me, a gay dude, instead of a female friend because she was nervous about the whole thing. We figured it wouldn't be a big deal, and in the worst case scenario, they don't want to pay for my plane ticket. She'd just cover it for me, and that's it. We were supposed to be picked up by the hotel at the airport, so the day comes and we arrive to Miami. There's a guy holding a sign with her last name, and the paper has the hotel logo. We are greeted, and we are escorted to a big black SUV. Here is where it gets weird. As soon as we are gonna get in the car, the driver is visibly upset. We thought he was talking to the guy who walked us over, but he was talking to my friend. He had a very thick accent and was wearing dark shades. He was telling my friend that she was not allowed to bring her boyfriend and that she got mad and said it was supposed to be 2 girls, not a guy and a girl. She was very flustered. He was demanding to see where the other girl was. We were speechless and confused. The guy who walked us to the car looked annoyed, got in the passenger seat, and started to fight with the driver in Portuguese. It wasn't Spanish. Then he turns to us and asks where the other girl is at. My friend tells them very upset because there is no other girl, and that I'm just a friend coming with her on the trip. The big guy in the passenger seats gets out, tosses our luggage out of the car, and says something like this is some fucking bullshit, gets in the car, and they take off. That was it. We were in shock. Utter and complete shock. My friend immediately emails Melissa, the public relations person we had been in contact through email with, to tell her what happened. No response. We decide to take a cab and show up to the hotel. When we show up is when everything makes sense. The hotel had been rebranded and had a completely different name, owner, and staff. We show them the Instagram, and is indeed the Instagram of the hotel it used to be, but not the new one. They never contacted us. They never did anything. Whoever was in charge of the old Instagram account for the old hotel did, or whoever got a hold of it did. Mind you, this was a somewhat big hotel account with 10,000 followers. It was real, but upon further inspection, we realized the pics were really old, and so were the posts. My friend felt like an idiot and would not stop crying. We called the police, met up with a detective, nothing ever came out of it. They investigated who was running the account before or who had access to it. None of the people who used to run that account had anything to do with it. Nothing ever came out of this. It's upsetting and scary to know that whoever wanted to abduct my friend or any other girls by using this old hotel Instagram knows who my friend is. That Instagram has since been deleted and we never heard anything from anyone ever again. But to think my friend would have been kidnapped had she gone with another girl instead of me sends chills down my spine. Be careful of the creepy hotel in South Beach. I'm a girl. My mom was a horrible addict. She barely took care of me as a kid. At the time of this incident, I was around 6 or 7, so my awareness and understanding of things happening may not totally make much sense. This happened in the 1990s. One night, my mother and I were on a car ride. I wasn't sure why we were driving, but it was late at night. I'm not sure what time it was, but I assume it was really late because there weren't many cars on the street and I was sleeping in the back seat. I don't even remember getting in the car. My mom drove up to some sketchy house and left me in the car for what felt like forever. Suddenly, the car door swung open and someone violently grabbed me by my arm and yanked me out of the car. I started screaming and crying until the man that grabbed me looked in my eyes and said, "Be quiet and don't try to run, or I'll kill you." He had a scruffy beard and looked like a madman. I was scared to death, so I listened. He held me tight by my arm, shut the car door, and walked with me down the street. I looked back at the house. My mom was in, hoping that my mom would come out at the last second and save me. I looked at the house as long as I could as the man dragged me further and further away. As we walked down the street, I wanted to cry, but I was in shock and in fear. I didn't know what to do. If I sniffled or cried, the man would tighten his grip and yell at me. I can't even explain how scared and confused I was. We walked for a little while and ended up in the projects. The projects were a bunch of buildings crammed together in a shitty neighborhood. We walked into one of the buildings and walked up a flight of stairs. My legs and feet hurt like hell, but I was too scared to stop moving or complain. We walked up another flight of stairs when I saw some random guy smoking a cigarette in the stairway. Then, without warning, the guy that kidnapped me fell to the ground. It happened so fast. I didn't know how the kidnapper fell to the ground so fast, but the next thing I remember is the cigarette guy was punching and kicking the kidnapper in his head and face. The kidnapper was out cold. Cigarette guy picked up the kidnapper by the back of his jacket and threw him down the stairs. You have no idea how scary and violent it is to see an unconscious man fall down the stairs. To this day, I still have a fear of falling downstairs. He bled everywhere. I still have no idea how cigarette guy knew to help me, but I'm glad he did. Maybe he could see tears in my eyes. Maybe he just picked up on something and had a bad vibe, but he acted instantly. The first second he could, he attacked my would-be kidnapper. Cigarette guy starts pacing back and forth, swearing at himself, gritting his teeth and clenching his fists. I thought he was mad at me, so I started to cry. He looked at me and said, okay, shut up. Shut up. He had an attitude, so I listened to him out of fear. I wasn't as scared of the cigarette guy as much as the bearded guy, but I was still in fear of him. He started to ask me questions with an attitude, "Why are you out this late? Where are your parents? Why would you talk to strangers? I was in so much shock and confusion I couldn't answer the man's questions correctly. He asked if I knew my way home, and I told him I didn't. I told him a broken story about what happened, and somehow with the information I gave him, he knew where my mom's car was. The only thing I remember about the road is passing a house with Christmas lights on it, despite Christmas already being over. I think he knew the area well enough and figured out where I needed to go from that information, but I honestly don't even remember telling him about the Christmas lights. Anyways, he told me he would take me back if I promised over and over that I wouldn't tell the police that I saw him or anyone that looked like him, and made me promise that I wouldn't even tell the police anything. He had an attitude. I didn't care what he asked me. I just wanted to go back to my mom, so I agreed. I followed him down the stairs. The bearded guy was still laying on the ground, bleeding at the bottom of the stairs when the cigarette guy threw him down. He wasn't moving at all. For all I know, he was dead, and I hope now that he was. Cigarette guy stepped over the bearded guy, and I followed. We walked outside, and cigarette guy looked panicky. I remember him telling me the police don't like me. We walked out of the projects, and my feet still hurt. Cigarette guy was walking fast in a panic, and I had to basically jog to keep up with him. I started crying, and he asked what was wrong. I told him my feet hurt, and I remember him sucking his teeth and picking me up with an attitude. He awkwardly cradled me in both arms. He walked down the road for a moment. Then I remember him swearing and running behind a house or a building. A cop car was driving down the road. He put me down and told me to run to the police car. I tried to run, but my legs could barely move, and I was scared. The cop car kept driving and rode away without seeing me before I could even get remotely close to it. He kept swearing to himself as he picked me up again and ran down the street. He took me behind a lot of houses and hid from every cop car that drove by. I assumed now that the police were looking for me. He carried me in both arms, running fast down the road when I saw my mom in her car in the distance. She was surrounded by police. Cigarette guy put me down and told me to run to the police. I got so excited the pain in my legs disappeared. He put me down and ran away. I ran towards the police and my mom. My mom picked me up and hugged me tight. The police started to ask me and my mom questions. I don't remember too much about their questions, but I remember my mom telling the police some convoluted story that just didn't make any sense. She basically told me to not say anything, and I didn't say much, but cried a whole bunch. We went home. Days later, my dad picked me up and knew something was wrong. I told him everything. I never lived with my mom again. When I grew up and had time to think about that day, I never forgave my mother. Not too long ago, I asked my dad what he remembers about the situation, and he told me what he thinks happened from what I explained to him from years ago. He said my mom was on a drug binge. I got kidnapped, someone saved me. But the person that saved me had warrants and wasn't mad at me. He was just frustrated with the situation that he had to deal with. Imagine being a criminal on the run, and now you have a kidnapped girl with you and you just beat a guy up half to death. If he would have gotten caught with me, he could be in jail for my kidnapping. With my mom lying and me being in shock and confused, I wouldn't be able to tell them that the man helped me, because while it was all happening, I didn't even notice he was helping me. To the man that saved me, thanks. To the man that tried to kidnap me, let's not meet.